Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're investigating a deeply unsettling, honestly laugh-out-loud bleak mystery. Like, why on earth does humanity possess this absolute unyielding fetish for setting trillions of dollars on fire to blow each other up, instead of, I don't know, actually fixing the economy, funding schools, or keeping our hospitals open? So let's dive straight into the biology, the bureaucracy, and the budgets behind our absolute favorite apocalyptic hobby. It's a dark, frankly absurd paradox, right? I mean, if you ask anyone, as a species, we claim to want peace, prosperity, and just a nice place to live. But our receipts, our global financial receipts show we have an undeniable, almost comical obsession with expensive explosions. Just look at this number. In 2025 alone, global military expenditure hit an unprecedented $2.887 trillion. Trillion with a T. That is a staggering 2.5% of the entire global GDP. We are basically looking at our collective global bank account, completely ignoring the eviction notices, and deciding that our absolute top priority is a shiny new assortment of ballistic missiles. Part 1. Caveman Brains and Tribal Games. So, to actually understand this incredibly bleak budgeting strategy, evolutionary psychology tells us we kind of have to start by blaming our deeply flawed monkey brains. Honestly, our modern trillion-dollar defense budgets are basically just a massively overfunded evolutionary hangover. Researchers point to this male warrior psychology. See, traits like coalitional aggression evolved as a brutal way for early humans to violently secure scarce resources, land, and mates. Fast forward a few 100,000 years, and we're literally buying stealth bombers just to scratch a psychological itch left over from the Stone Age. At the core of this biological glitch is the tribal instinct hypothesis. We are genetically wired to be aggressively tribal, automatically categorizing everyone we meet into us versus them. Our brains actually reward us for preferring the in-group and actively discriminating against out-groups. Now, this made total survival sense when we were cavemen fighting over a patch of hallucinogenic berries, but it's an absolute unmitigated disaster when those exact same impulses suddenly have access to autonomous drones and intercontinental nuclear warheads. Part 2. The Permanent War Economy. Fast forward from those spear-throwing cavemen to modern bureaucrats in tailored suits, and we meet the military-industrial complex. This is a system that brilliantly and incredibly cynically industrialized our biological paranoia. Look at their playbook. It is brutally simple and flawlessly executed. Step 1. Use foreign threats or an endless war on terror to justify massive, unceasing spending. Step 2. Weave that spending so deeply into the domestic economy that it becomes a completely permanent fixture. Step 3. Profit forever. It's just an endless, self-sustaining loop of justified paranoia that literally turns human fear into quarterly dividends. Take the absolute Mona Lisa of this playbook, Lockheed Martin's F-35 fighter jet. By deliberately scattering its subcontracting supply chain across 45 different states, the military-industrial complex essentially holds Congress hostage. Think about it. Do you want to cancel the jet program so you can fund a local hospital or fix failing infrastructure? Well, congratulations, you just fired thousands of your own voters. It's what researchers literally call political insurance, and it is terrifyingly genius. It essentially guarantees that dialing back the war machine looks like an economic attack on the working class. But here's the dark, laugh-out-loud punchline to that strategy. That so-called political insurance doesn't even build shared wealth for the actual citizens building the weapons. Of the 20 states most heavily dependent on military manufacturing, 14 of them still suffer from poverty rates at or above the national average. So despite all those trillion-dollar contracts filtering through these communities, the average person isn't getting rich. The wealth doesn't trickle down. It detonates. The underlying economic reality here is captured perfectly in research analyzing the demilitarization of Costa Rica. The quote reads, "The purchase of arms has no circulatory effect." When you pay a teacher or a nurse, their salary circulates, right? They buy groceries, they hire a plumber, they stimulate the actual local economy. But when you buy a multi-million-dollar Hellfire missile, you are essentially locking millions of dollars of taxpayer money in a metal tube, dropping it from the sky, and vaporizing it. It helps absolutely no one's daily economic life. It is literally the ultimate dead-end investment. Part 3. Health versus Hellfire missiles. So exactly how bad are our priorities? Looking at global receipts from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, or SIPRI, the surface trend lines don't look completely apocalyptic. Globally, we actually spend about 2.5 times more on health than the military. But wait, don't start clapping just yet. This global average is a total illusion. It's heavily skewed by a few wealthy regions, effectively hiding a much darker reality, especially when you look at fragile and conflict-affected states. Because when you break it down by region, the picture gets incredibly depressing. In places like the Middle East, North Africa, and South Asia, governments frequently dump far more cash into their militaries than their healthcare systems. It's not even a competition. They're actively crowding out desperately needed investments in hospitals, social protection, and basic human infrastructure just to buy more things that go boom. The human cost is staggering, entirely eclipsed by the massive shadow of the defense budget. And if you ever want a deadpan, data-driven indicator of how much a government actually values its own citizens, just look at the SIPRI data breakdown. 93% of democracies prioritize health spending over the military. Meanwhile, nearly half of all autocracies would literally rather buy a shiny new tank fleet than fund a local clinic. It is the ultimate litmus test for whether a government sees its people as citizens to protect or just, acceptable casualties. Part 4. The price of peace. All right, now for the ultimate gut punch. What are the actual opportunity costs here? Like, what could we buy if we simply stopped buying so many bombs? Brace yourselves, because this math will genuinely make you want to cry. Compare the massive bubble of a single year's global military budget to the tiny, almost pathetic cost bubbles of achieving the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. It is incredibly, almost laughably cheap to save the world, provided we just stop spending all our money figuring out how to end it. Let's get specific. For roughly 10 to 13% of the world's annual military budget, we could entirely eliminate extreme poverty and global hunger by 2030. Let that sink in for a second. We literally have the cash on hand to end global starvation tomorrow. But, if we feed everyone, then how on earth would we fund the next generation of uncrewed combat drones? Priorities, people. And somehow it gets exponentially worse. For a measly 3.2% of our global explosion fund, we could provide universal primary and early secondary education of adequate quality to every single child worldwide. 3.2%. The Pentagon probably loses more than that in sofa cushions, misplaced inventory, and accounting rounding errors. We could educate all of humanity for the margin of error on a defense contract. The genuinely crazy thing is, this isn't just theoretical math. We know exactly what happens when you finally kick the military habit. Look at the Costa Rica anomaly. They famously abolished their entire standing army in the 1940s. They took all that defense money, heavily funded schools and hospitals instead, and enjoyed a massive, sustained peace dividend of rapid economic growth and political stability. It turns out, investing in living, educated humans pays off substantially better than investing in dead ones. Who knew, right? So the final excruciating takeaway from all this data is this. We are a species biologically trapped by our own cavemen impulses, systematically being fleeced by grifting defense contractors. We have the data, we have the money, and we literally have the blueprint to fix the world right in front of us. It just leaves us to decide whether we're finally going to evolve or if we're just going to stubbornly keep budgeting for our very own highly profitable apocalypse. Thanks for exploring this explainer with me. I'll leave you to go process that incredibly depressing math.